All right, we are back. Episode 75 of Dynasty Trades in 5. I'm Clay.
Hey, I'm Shane, and everyone said this one last 3 episodes. Or that was just me. Never mind.
Yeah, here we are, episode 75. Not quite 85. That's 85 Bears. Everybody knows about the 85 Bears. We're talking another Bear tonight, right?
Oh, there we go. Nicely done. So we're talking Justin Fields tonight. Figured it was a good time to talk about him. Another ding dong, the witch is dead. Nagy's finally gone. What are your thoughts on Fields, Shane? He had 420 rushing yards. We got to see some of that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we got to see him run a little bit in spite of Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is just awful head coach, and I don't care if it was his offense or it was just his DNA pumped into the offensive coordinator that was spewing out onto the field. But Matt Nagy just poisoned the well completely. Matt Nagy had done this before, right? He had a mobile quarterback, and he was like, you know what I'm going to do with this guy? I'm going to turn him into a pocket passer. And he's like, he can't throw from the pocket, dude. What are you doing? Fields can throw from the pocket, but Fields is super mobile. Matt Nagy didn't want to use any of that mobility, and for some reason wanted to keep rolling Andy Dalton out there, who had very nice stats even while the Bears were losing. So I don't really know what those nice stats did. I haven't lost any love for Justin Fields. Look, he didn't have a great year, but he didn't have as bad as years, say, someone like Trevor Lawrence. Another thing is Fields had absolutely no weapons. Allen Robinson played about as hard as I did this year. He put no effort into it. He had a very good second wide receiver operating as his wide receiver one in Darnell Mooney. And he had a little bit of connection with Cole Kmet, who's an okay tight end. So considering that he had really, really porous options, like there's games he was throwing to Jakeem Grant, I'm still a big believer in Justin Fields, and he's a guy. If he left a sour taste in your mouth, I'm fine with getting him low.
Yeah, so Fields, I think we were all in. Shane was all in. I was all in on Fields preseason, pre-startup season. Basically ever since last off season at the beginning, even before we knew he was going to be on the Bears, I was in on Fields just because you knew he was going to get the draft capital. And you saw the surge of the quarterbacks last year. I mean, he was a first-round startup pick in a lot of places. At the latest, maybe, top 15, top 18. So we kind of already anointed him like 85, 90% of what his ceiling would be. So, if you feel a little disappointed that you invested in him and he only ended up finishing where he did, you can learn from the process, but I wouldn't necessarily put that indictment on Justin Fields, the quarterback. He's not somebody that went out there and literally just was handed a bunch of easy throws. Seemed like it was a lot harder for him. So, his passer rating was 10 points lower than Baker Mayfield. So yikes. I mean, the numbers where he came in as a passer, you're a little wary of like, is he going to be able to translate? But given what he did in college, I'm willing to give him a pass, even if they hire a defensive coach, which wouldn't be great. It'd be much better to have Dayball, like Shane said. But there's some encouraging things about him. He's quarterback 15 in ADP. I actually think that's a little bit of recency bias. I don't think he's going to go that far down in startups if he were doing a startup today. I mean, like, you have Tua over him. Trevor Lawrence maybe goes ahead of him, but probably not. So I think he's probably more in that like top 12 range. He just hasn't produced there yet. So I think it's interesting to buy. I'm sure we'll talk a little trade value. I mean, I'd rather have Trey Lance over Justin Fields. But I think you could put both of those guys as like, if there's somebody outside of the current top 12, that it's just, there's a reason why we bought into them last year inside the top 12. And I think those are the two I'm willing to go back to that well. More so than we already did a Trevor Lawrence video. And we questioned, does he have top 12 ceiling now? Whereas, maybe Fields has a little bit of a higher ceiling still.
So straight up, who do you like better, Shane? Tua or Fields?
Fields.
Easy.
Scott?
Easy.
Easy Fields. Totally agree. So Fields or Tua and let's call it the 2022 109.
2022 109. In Superflex, I'm going Fields. I assume it's always Superflex.
Always.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about what that 109 could be. I mean, we're recording this after the Jamison Williams injury, so it is a little concerning. These later firsts this year. Okay, yeah, I'm still going to get to take a shot at a player, but I do think we're getting closer to, once we get to May or June, you're going to get to a point where those late firsts are going to be a lot more defined. So that's a decent process deal, but I think that's a deal that's warranted on what can you get for that 109 now. If you're comfortable with the Fields to a pivot, you have the 109, but I'm really trying to move that 109 before we get to any clarity on the class.
Would you rather have Joe Burrow or Justin Fields in the 106?
Joe Burrow.
That's a great process deal, honestly, because if you really think Fields has that top 12 upside, we've talked about Burrow. He definitely is in the top 8 now, but does he have top 3 upside, top 5 upside, maybe top 5? But I think you could say ceiling wise, their gap is very close. So that's a good one. He's on my buy list for the offseason, just simply because I try to keep my quarterback shares pretty balanced, and he's one that I've given up some teams that have had Fields, so I want to get some more shares. I think if you really want to be convicted and you want to buy him, I think if you come to the table with a top 2 or 3 pick in this class, you're at least at the discussion table there, just because that pick can be flexible. It may be. I think a lot of people will look at that pick and say, well, I like Fields better than any quarterback. I think most people are going to agree with that. They would take Fields over any quarterback in this class, probably 90, 95% of people. So you're not going to sell them that, hey, well, that 101, you're going to get a better quarterback. If they don't have any quarterbacks and Fields is their only guy, well, then, okay, they're probably not going to be interested in just a pick. But I think if they're willing to sell them and you came to the table and you said, this is the 101 or 102, that could be the wide receiver 1 or the running back 1. I think that's a fair price to add, and if it takes an extra second or something like that, I think with a down quarterback class, he's a little more appealing than he might have been in a different year.